Hello, it's Monday, February 26th, and welcome to episode 302 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Morgan Vina, and I'm joined today by NSI Founder and Executive Director Jamil Jaffer, NSI Deputy Executive Director Jessica Jones, and Senior Fellow Lester Munson. Today, we're taking a look at Polish Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski, who has been on quite the roll this past week. On Friday, he delivered a blistering takedown of the Russian ambassador to the UN during a UN Security Council session. Sikorski summarily dismantled each false allegation in response to the Russian Perm Rep's remarks. Also on Friday, Sikorski had some tough words for the United States. In a Bloomberg interview, Sikorski cautioned that if the U.S. supplemental for Ukraine doesn't pass Congress, even with the president's backing, and U.S. allies are left in the lurch, this will have profound consequences on U.S. global leadership. He went so far as to warn that some countries will start hedging and others will consider building their own nuclear programs. Jess, Sikorski, as Polish foreign minister, has some legitimacy here. Poland is not geographically blessed in that it is right on Russia's border. Poland will spend over 4% of its GDP on defense in 2024. Does he have a point? Do we think this is going to change U.S. policy?
I mean, he was on a whirlwind. He did a number of interviews over the weekend as well, and making the case for the supplemental, making the case for continued U.S. support to Ukraine. I thought it was really interesting. He was pointing out European allies as peace and security providers, not just takers, which is, kind of a grievance here in the U.S. And talking about showing, European allies showing up after 9/11, because I think, here in the Beltway bubble, we talk a lot about how the international order built by the U.S. and our alliance system, benefits us. I don't think that story plays out as much with the American public anymore and the average voter, right? Like that linkage is kind of lost, I think, and we're a little, ways away from World War II. So he needs to make new arguments, which I think he's doing. I thought it was interesting. I can't remember which interview, but he said to Speaker Johnson, making a direct plea to let the supplemental, go to a vote, let democracy operate. And I think, that makes a lot of sense for Congress. But I'm wondering, in the context of all these conversations we have here on the show, whether he should be making a plea to also President Biden to play up and describe and argue for continued support to Ukraine with the average voter, right? I think he needs to be talking to more than just Speaker Johnson.
Mm-hmm. So, Jamil, is Sikorski saying the quiet part out loud here? I mean, aren't U.S. allies already hedging? I mean, we've seen this play out, particularly in the past couple of years in the Middle East. I mean, Saudi Arabia had entered into this agreement with China to somehow get their relations with Iran back on track. So, is this anything new? What's different here?
Well, I mean, obviously what's new and different here is it's Poland. It's not just any other country. It's one of our strongest allies in NATO and in Europe. But the problem, of course, is that this is just another, brick in a long wall of stupid U.S. actions, right? We've had bad decisions in Afghanistan, bad decisions on red lines in Iraq and Syria, bad decisions on allowing China to hack us, bad decisions on allowing Russia to hack us, bad decisions on Iran attacking us around the globe. We refuse to take global leadership, and we're surprised when people are like, oh, we don't think you're going to be there for us when we need you, and we're going to do our own thing. That should come as no surprise to the United States. If we want to get in the game, we got to stop holding up the supplemental. It's barely enough money to even keep Ukraine going. We need to put a lot more into the fight for them to win, which is how we really reestablish global leadership. And it doesn't do any favors for our friends in Taiwan or anywhere else around the globe who are wondering whether the U.S. is going to be there for them. The answer today is a resounding no. And Joe Biden can say all he wants for being up there in the White House. He, as Jess points out, and Les pointed out on Friday, he's not going around the country fighting for this, right? If he really wanted this supplemental, he'd be going to fight for it. And frankly, it's a catastrophe of Republican leadership, which used to be the party of national security, because now this party kowtows to Donald Trump, who literally has no clue what he's doing on this issue. He has not firmly taken a position on Ukraine, but we all know where he is. Let's be serious. He doesn't support it. Everyone understands that. He needs to get out the mix, and Congress needs to do its job, because there is, by the way, a voting majority in Congress for this aid. They just need to be allowed to vote.
Yeah, so Les, playing the devil's advocate here, I mean, Poland is a special case, right? I mean, they're actually paying 4% of their GDP, and that's going towards defense, right? But many other, NATO allies are not adhering to the Wales Pledge. They're not paying up, and many in Congress in particular sort of use this as a reason to be skeptical of continued U.S. assistance to Ukraine. If those closest geographically to Russia refuse to actually pay their fair share, so to speak, is this enough of a reason for Congress not to really be pushing the supplemental as hard as I think we would like them to be?
So, Morgan, I think a couple of things on Sikorski. He is as an astute an observer of the United States as there is in the world. He's a good friend of our country. He knows us well. He's been around the block many times. He has a long-term relationship with a lot of people in D.C. And I think he's kind of playing the Winston Churchill role here before World War II. Churchill said, "You can count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted every other option." I feel like we're in that exhausting all the other options part right now. And maybe we need a kick in the butt from a guy like Sikorski, who is a friend of the United States, to kind of say, hey, you guys got to wake up already. This stuff is starting to matter. Whether it's Biden needing to have more of a campaign to promote this assistance, or Congress actually having the darn vote that we think will pass the House, regardless of the Freedom Caucus kind of careening around all over the place on this thing. I think it's a really useful purpose he's serving here, and to kind of extend the parallel to the pre-World War II. We saw Tucker Carlson kind of playing this Father Coughlin role of warning against any U.S. entanglements and kind of praising our adversaries. This stuff really is lining up a lot like it was in the late 30s and maybe 1940 from the last century. So, folks, it's starting to get really serious. We need to start paying attention. I don't think there's a lot of time left here. And I think Congress needs to act. The president needs to act. It's really neither branch is distinguishing itself at the moment.
And by the way, Les, it's worth noting that both times before World War I and World War II, when the U.S. hesitated and slow-rolled it and didn't help its allies as effectively as it could have, what ended up happening? We got dragged into a bigger, much worse war that was much more costly for our public and much more costly for the American taxpayers. This idea somehow that not doing the right thing now is the right answer, we've seen this show. It's happened before. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past.
I will disagree with you on one thing, Jamil, and God help me for saying something remotely positive about Trump. But I do think he's left the door open to Congress providing some aid here. He said, make it a loan, not a grant. Fine. Let's go ahead. Let's make it a loan. Let's open that door. Let's run through that. Speaker Johnson, you've got your opportunity here to do the right thing. Take it and run with it. Let's go. Yeah. Call it Lend-Lease Part 2 if you have to, but let's do it.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Wednesday, February 28th, for our next episode of Fault Lines. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.